The next stitch is called a pistil, or a French knot with a stem, and you'll find that, let me show you, in these blocks here, the one with the basket. There's these little little blooms, and then they have a French knot, but it's got a little stem to it. That's a pretty good one to see right there. So you're going to start at the base of the pistil, not with the where the dot, not where the knot is going to be. Now you're going to wrap your thread 2 times, and you kind of put your finger on those wraps, but loose enough that you can slide it up and down like that. So you're going to put the needle down where the knot is going to go. And I drew that knot a little bit bigger so you could see it. So I don't know if my embroidery will cover it or not. And then once you get the needle in there, then you're going to pull this thread so that it's, sorry about that, nice and taut. And you're going to keep your finger on that thread. And then we're going to, but not too tight because you want to pull your needle through. And then you just pull the needle down, and there you do. You got a little stem with a French knot on the top, and that's a pistil. There's a couple places on the pattern where there are some stem or satin stitches, and a satin stitch is just a nice filled in stitch. So we have the little house on the beehive and also the bird cherry. One little trick I do is I find a felt pen that's similar in color to the color of floss that I'm going to use. And that way, if my stitches aren't right next to each other, it will hide it a little bit better. So in this case, I had a green Sharpie that I used. So you're going to start on one end and then just come down on the other end. This is a stitch where I would recommend using a hoop. And you're just going to come up right next to it and always stay just on the outside of that line. This is my ambidextrous stitching. I'm left-handed, but I can do both sometimes. I just can't talk and stitch at the same time. That's the hard part. Now, if I didn't have that colored in green behind there, you'd really see that those stitches aren't touching exactly. And the more you practice, the better you get at this. So take it easy on yourself if you're getting frustrated. It just takes a little time. And maybe it needs one more over here. Okay, so that's my little satin stitch. The running stitch is probably the easiest stitch. If you've ever done any quilting, it's basically like that. It's just an up and down. And the running stitch is found in a couple places. It's around the word in the middle, and there's also a few running stitches on the beehive. So any place you see a dashed line, those are going to be the running stitches. There you go. Pretty easy. All right, so the next one is going to be a fishbone stitch. And these are these little leaves that have the line drawn down the center. So you can see them here. The fishbone stitch kind of makes a nice little vertical vein in the leaf. So it's used on these 3 leaves here. So to do that, I've kind of changed this up from the way I used to do it. You're going to start at the tip. So that's the stem over there. You're going to start far away from the stem. And before I used to bring it down just a little bit. Now I've started doing it all the way to the end. And that just gives me a really nice center line to stitch across. So the first thing you do is you're going to come up on one side of where you just started on the line. Now I'm going to come down maybe a 1/4 of an inch on the other side of that middle line. And then I'm going to come up on the other side of the point. There we go, right on the line. Now I'm going to take the thread and I'm going to cross over that center line, and it's parallel with this other stitch, and just go down there. So now you can see there's a little X there. So you just go back and forth from one side to the next, and each time you're going to cross the center line and you're going to come down just a little bit farther. Okay, I'll speed this up. So I'm near the end of this leaf, and when you come to the end, you just fudge a little bit. So like this side, it looks like I'm going to need a couple more stitches than I would on the other side. And that's fine. So I just come back up on the line and go down in the point. There. That's a nice little fishbone stitch. For the bee, you actually use a fly stitch, which I kind of think is humorous. So you're going to start in the middle of his body on one side, and you're going to loop the thread up around the top, go down right across from his body on the other side, and bring the needle up at the top. So on a fly stitch, you would just take the needle down right on the other side of that thread. But since we have these antennae here, we're going to go ahead and take it to the ends of that. And then I'm going to do the other one right there. Go inside the loop, kind of form it to make the bee's body. Now all I have to do is the other side of his body. Same thing, only the other direction. I'm going to come up right at the center bottom, carry the thread behind your needle, and now I'm going to make this stinger. And guess what? The wings are the same thing. So little fly stitches. And right to the point. And this time I am going to take it right down on the other side of the thread, the loopy thread. I'll do the other one. Across his body. So even though they're tiny, they're actually not too bad to do. They're pretty fast. And now after this, all he needs are his little stripes. So those are going to be a satin stitch. And if you pull these really tight, then they kind of close up on you. So go ahead and let them have a little breathing room. Okay, so for the satin stitch, you're just going to come up on one side. And I'm staying inside of my little stitches, and then down on the other. And again, you don't want to go up on the same side you just went down on. Come up back where you began to get your stitches to lay right next to each other. Okay, so that's the main body. And then we'll also give him just like a little head. Maybe just one stitch there, and then another one down by his tail for a little stripe down there. And there's our little bee. Now, when I used the variegated threads, I wanted to point this out. Oh, that's the wrong one. Here's the variegated one. Okay. So here, I really intentionally used the dark thread for the bodies, the light thread for the wings. you can do that or not. The other thing I wanted to show you on this, I forgot. This is the one that I printed the design out using my inkjet printer. So it's printed on there. When I drew up the design, I tried to use a really fine pen so that when you print it out, it won't be a really thick line. But you still do, if you use a light thread, I don't know if you can see or not, you can still sometimes see a little bit of the line that's drawn. If I used a darker thread, then it would hide it a little bit better. But it doesn't bother me. It actually looks a little bit like a shadow. And I think unless you're really looking for it, I don't think you're going to notice it too much. So that's how you do the bees. And oh, here's the running stitches that I was talking about, right in there, and then right inside the words. There's another little bee for you. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it or learned something from it, I hope you will click like, and I would love it if you'd also follow me so you don't miss any new tutorials. Thank you.